This is going to be a fun series. Before the release of No Way Home, I thought, what if events went differently? What if Tobey Maguire Spider-Man was in the first installment of the Avengers franchise? What if Sam Raimi's legacy continued in the MCU? How would this change the timeline of the MCU as a whole? This will be the first part of this new series of what if the past Spider-Men were in the MCU. This will be very different from my older what if called What If Tobey Maguire Spider-Man Was an Endgame, as Peter will be right into the action from the start. Without wasting any more time, let's dive right into the first part of this Marvel's What If. After events of Spider-Man 3 in 2007, Peter Parker and Mary Jane are together. They were happily married, and 5 years have passed since. Mary Jane was in her pregnancy phase, and there was a newborn due in another 6 months. She was still a singer at the jazz club, while Peter has taken the position of a senior photographer at the Daily Bugle. J. Jonah Jameson was still the chief editor of the Daily Bugle, but his aggressiveness has toned down after all of these years. He was finding funds to begin his own company, and Peter told MJ that he dreams of having his own company and rehabilitation of limbs, especially for war veterans. He said that he is close of getting the funds he needed, but he is still short of the necessary equipment and resources. Peter added that Kurt Connors inspired him to establish a company to help war veterans regenerate their lost limbs after war. Peter himself was no longer Spider-Man after the events of Spider-Man 3. He felt that keeping the suit was a better option as he wanted to honor the memories of Harry Osborn, his best friend. Peter and MJ lived their lives like ordinary people. Events of Avengers would mostly play out the same, and Loki would encounter the other in exchange for retrieving the Tesseract. The other provides an army for the Chitauri to help Loki in his invasion on Earth. Nick Fury, who is the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. with the other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, were attacked by Loki at the remote research facility. After Loki stole the Tesseract and corrupted Clint, Fury decided to activate the Avengers initiative. Bruce will still be recruited by Natasha, while Fury himself would convince Steve Rogers. Agent Phil Coulson would visit Tony Stark to have him check on Selvig's research, and Fury said to Natasha that it would be great if they could enlist the help of Spider-Man. The other heroes in the meeting room were surprised that Fury wanted to recruit him. Tony said that Spider-Man is already a legend, considering how he was one of the first superheroes of the modern era. Steve, who has never seen Spider-Man before, watched clips of him battling against Dr. Octopus, Sandman, Venom, and the Green Goblin. Steve was excited to meet a hero who has real superpowers, but Fury said that Spider-Man has been off the radar for the past 5 years. They couldn't track him down even if they wanted to. The Avengers decided to continue their plan like in the original timeline. Their goal was to stop Loki and retrieve the Tesseract. Sometime later, the Avengers became divided over how to approach Loki after Captain America and Iron Man learned of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s intentions to harness the Tesseract's power. Amidst the distraction, Loki's other possessed agents and attacked the helicarrier. A battle broke out amidst the helicarrier, but Tony and the rest managed to fend them off. A mind-controlled Dr. Eric Selvig managed to open a wormhole above Stark Tower that has begun the invasion of New York. Peter was dispatched by J. Jonah Jameson to get a scoop on the wormhole that has just opened. Peter was hesitant to go at first as he felt bad about the entire situation. His spider senses were tingling, but MJ said that everything will be fine. She said that if anything happens, she would immediately head over to Aunt May's, and Peter then kissed MJ before he went to take some shots for the Bugle. Figuring that things might go south, Peter dusted his old briefcase that had his suit in it. He decided to bring it along. Rogers, Stark, Romanoff, Barton, Thor, and the Hulk rallied in their defenses of New York City, where they faced tons of Chitauri army. Peter arrived at the scene where the Avengers were already battling the Chitauri. A car then flew towards his direction, and Peter's spider sense kicked in, and he instantly pushed the nearby bystanders away. He also managed to web the car from crashing onto them. Captain America saw what happened and realized that his actions matched the legendary Spider-Man. Steve wanted to approach him, but more attacks from the Chitauri prevented him from doing so. Peter continued his job after bringing the bystanders to safety. He then received a phone call and wanted to dismiss it as he was still busy with his work. He saw that MJ was calling him and quickly answered. He heard that MJ was whispering and sobbing that she and the other residents of the apartment have been detained by the aliens. She was about to say more before Peter heard screaming. Peter quickly ditched his camera and changed into his Spider-Man suit in an alleyway. Although this wasn't his first time in 5 years of returning to hero duties, Peter was feeling the adrenaline again. He lost Harry and he thought to himself that with great power there must also come great responsibility. He can't lose MJ as well. The Avengers were still battling with Loki's army, and Hulk managed to beat Loki into submission while Natasha made her way to the generator on top of Stark Tower. She managed to free Eric Selvig and also from Loki's mind control. Peter meanwhile arrived where MJ was being detained. He saw several Chitauri that were guarding the hostages closely. Peter fired several webs at them and incapacitated them silently. The other guards were alarmed and started shooting at him, but Peter managed to dodge them. As Peter was still rusty from not having to fight in a long time, one of the Chitauri gunners managed to shoot him in the ribs. Peter fell back and he held his ribs in pain. The gunner aimed his weapon at Peter before a shield flew and chopped his head off. The shield went back to Steve Rogers and Steve went to Peter and gave him a hand. He said that he saw Spider-Man saving the civilians earlier. Steve said that he has always wanted to meet one of the early legendary superheroes. Peter dismissed it as he was just an average Joe. Steve said that they can continue their chit-chat later as the invasion is still at large. Peter, under his Spider-Man suit, said that this was above his capabilities. He could only save and bring the bystanders to safety. Steve said that having Spider-Man to assist them would be a great boost to the team. MJ told Peter that he should go and perform his deeds as Spider-Man one more time. Peter then agreed as MJ and the others went to safety. Peter followed Captain America as they continued battling against the Chitauri. Nick Fury's superiors from the World Security Council attempted to end the invasion by launching a nuclear missile at Midtown Manhattan. Stark then intercepted the missile and brought it into the wormhole. The nuclear detonated and destroyed the Chitauri legions. As Tony was falling down unconsciously, he was saved by Spider-Man. Spider-Man created a parachute of webs and saved him. He then brought Tony down and the other Avengers were surprised to see him. Spider-Man introduced himself as the Amazing Spider-Man and that his identity is to be kept a secret. They decided to respect his decision. In the end, the Chitauri and Loki's armies were defeated, and Loki was sent back to Asgard with Thor. They also brought the Tesseract back to Asgard too. Nick Fury went to Spider-Man and asked him if he wanted to join the Avengers. He said that he has his own responsibilities with his own personal life, and Steve Rogers thanked Spider-Man for helping him, and that the door is always open to be an Avenger, and Peter later returned back to MJ and embraced her. They were both glad that the aliens' attacks have stopped, and they were victorious. Peter, however, failed to get any shots for the Daily Bugle, and J. Jonah Jameson screamed at Peter. Peter was already used to it and ignored it, and he came back home and saw that on the table there was a check of $10 million. It had Tony Stark's name on the check. Tony said that he knows that Peter needs the money for his laboratory and research. He hoped that this fund can assist him, and he thanked him for saving his life during the attack. Peter was surprised in how Tony knew that he was Spider-Man, and before he saw behind the check that Tony will keep his identity as Spider-Man a secret. Peter Parker then smiled and embraced Mary Jane with the good news. His dreams of opening his own company has finally started at last. And that is going to be the first part of What If Tobey Maguire Spider-Man was in Avengers 2012. We will now continue the story later on with What If Tobey Maguire Spider-Man was in Age of Ultron in the second phase of the MCU. I hope you guys enjoyed this Marvel's What If, and with the upcoming No Way Home movie coming out, I'm super excited to see that, and I think we all know who's going to be in this film, and I thought I have to do this series before the film is released. Anyways, as always, if you guys are new around here and want to stay all up to date with the What If fan fictions, do make sure to subscribe, like, share, and turn your notifications on so you and your friends are all up to date with the latest content. But anyways, as always guys, thanks for tuning in, and stay safe and have a fantastic day.